Hi, everybody. Today I am answering the question, when should a caregiver give up? One answer is that it really depends on your definition of giving up and how you see life as being filled with losses and gains. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the feelings of caregivers who feel like they are doing as much as they can, who sometimes don't realize how they're going to keep going and doing this because it's all getting to be so much more. And how do we look at the decision to give up, if that's what we want to call it? Now, I personally don't call giving up giving up. To me, it's just looking at a situation differently and making some changes. So here's the premise of all this, right? Caregiving relationships can go on for years and years and years. Initially, we think that it's going to be this, 6-month project or a year project. And so many caregivers I know, God bless you all, 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later, you are still that caregiver. And so in this video, I'm going to share the one thing that all caregivers should know about giving up. Then I'm going to give you 4 tips to move forward through giving up that I like to call being flexible and being open-minded. Okay, so not really the thought of giving up. I'm Pamela D Wilson. My website is PamelaDWilson.com. Please press the share button on this video. A lot of hope, help, and support there. Online courses, ability to schedule one-on-one consultations with me, my caregiving library, my blog, the weekly podcast, The Caring Generation. So if you think of knowing when the time is to give up, let's look at sports athletes. So many athletes and even people in, public life, sometimes actors, they go out at what we call the top of their game. When they're healthy and they're energetic and they're doing all these things and it's really great, they go out at the top of their game so that they can then revise their goals for the rest of their life. Well, if you think of that for caregivers, that's a really great idea too, because as a caregiver, you want to be able to give your best to your aging parents, right? You want to do that when you have the emotional reserves, the physical reserves. After a period of time, caregivers, because it is work, you become burned out, frustrated, angry, exhausted. Your health declines. You're not giving your best. You're no longer at the top of your game. So why would that not be a great time to revise the caregiving situation? And again, you could say that's giving up. Well, it's not really giving up. It's looking at it in a different manner, saying, I'm not being the best person to care for my elderly parents again at this time in my life. What needs to happen? How do I still give that good care to my parents without me being the person who's doing it? When we think about this in life, okay, in general, big picture, life is filled with losses and gains, opportunities, risks, failures, night, day. And all of this research talks about the fact that depending on our personality, we might be a person who worries a lot or who looks at life as, this glass that's like, half full or half empty or whatever. And so the fear of change and the fear of failure and the fear of loss can make us hesitant to make any changes, especially if we've had maybe something we've tried or a past failure that didn't quite work out. And so we want to look at the idea of people who do well in life and people who succeed and have their expectations met, right? Because we kind of look at this idea of giving up as this negative, but it's really not. The people who succeed, they don't give up, but they revise their goals. They're more flexible. They keep going, but sometimes down a different path, or they take a different road, but they still eventually get to where they're going. When caregivers become burned out, you can question everything that you're doing. You can have a loss of self-esteem, loss of confidence. Your parents may be criticizing you. So at that point, you're kind of at this low point where you're feeling like, I can't do anything right. Nobody's happy with what I'm doing. That's a hard place to be. And so the challenge is to look at life not as failures or things that didn't work out, but to admit that we all have these gaps, things that we may not be super good at, but we can learn, and how we need to revise these care situations. In caregiving, one big idea is to realize that there's not one right way to do things. And not all caregiving situations are the same because we have all these personalities and different people, right? So if you think that there is only one right way to do something, you're going to be more likely to look at any change that you make as giving up or as a failure. So it's better to look at caregiving and a lot of experiences in life to say, well, this is what I wanted to do, but this happened, so I kind of have to like move over here and be a little flexible. And so there's so many ways to be a caregiver. It's not always you providing that care to a parent. The idea is care for a parent, no matter who's doing it, right? And so being more flexible helps you look at that. Now, your parents could be like super inflexible. They may not want anybody but family members, anybody but you. And so you kind of have to move them into that flexible area over here, thinking about the fact that, mom or dad, I'm not the best for you right now. I'm burned out. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. We have to look at something else. You got to look at all the options. Do the research, talk to people who have more experience than you do, and realize that you may not know everything that you need to know. There's so much information out there, so much support for caregivers. I can't even tell you how much because I've been doing this for 20 years, I know. But the key is for people who don't give up, you kind of put these changes into perspective and you take responsibility for like how your actions contributed, how the actions of your parents contributed. No blame, no failure, no giving up. How do we need to look at this situation differently so that we can still meet this goal in a different way and accept that that is what's going to happen? So these 4 final tips for what to do when you feel like you want to give up, you have to give up, maybe you're a failure. Trust me, you're not. If you're caring for someone, you have done so much good. So think about your attitude when you're facing challenges. It's so important to have a positive attitude, to be positive, to say, you know what, I don't know it all. I'm open to looking at things a different way. I'm open to other ideas from people, and I will consider them. The biggest thing in any challenge in life is really up here. It's your mental strength. It's how do you create mental strength? So if you think of how we create physical strength, it's, going to the gym and lifting weights and doing all that kind of stuff. You need a routine to create mental strength up here, okay? So if you're in that position where you're wondering if you should give up, work on your mental strength first. Whether it's meditation or walking out in nature, you have to figure out what that thing is that gives you mental strength. How do you become mentally strong and resilient and persistent so that you get past these bumps in the road? Many times that's looking at the problem from a different perspective. And sometimes if we're so focused on the problem here, we can't see all these opportunities out here. So you may need to talk to somebody else, talk to other people, schedule an Eldercare consultation with me to look at the situation differently from opposite perspectives, up, down, sideways, to be able to figure out what that is. Most of all, have faith in yourself. Create plans that you can actually implement. A list, work through your actions, and when you find yourself down, go back to those proven strategies that you developed to create mental strength and pull yourself back up. I'm Pamela D Wilson. Thank you for joining me for this video. Again, please press the share button. Share my website, PamelaDWilson.com, with other people that you know who are looking for hope, help, and support in caregiving, health, everything in between. I look forward to seeing you in another video.